in the uptown. Let me get this off my screen. All right, Ron, you got it set up to record? We all good? Awesome. So May 18th, 2009, I'm standing in front of a jury in Dallas, and this jury, these 12 men and women in this jury box, just listened to a 6-day criminal trial of crimes that I committed, these burglaries that I was committing. I was a meth addict, the head meth addict of all these other meth addicts, breaking into a bunch of people's houses for a 3-year span. They called them the Uptown Burglaries for the Uptown neighborhood of Dallas. And our crimes were non-aggravated, meaning that no one was ever home, no one got hurt. We never saw our victims. They never saw us. There was no physical victim involved in these crimes. No weapons were ever used. So they're non-aggravated property crimes around drugs. But at the end of this 6-day trial, the jury hated my guts because the jury heard the story of Damon West, a guy that had it all and threw it all away around drugs and crime. And at the end of that 6-day trial, they went to deliberate for 10 minutes on my punishment. 10 minutes, y'all. I don't know how much Law and Order y'all watch. Probably not much anymore because you live it. When the jury's gone for 10 minutes, it means they smoked you. And I came back in the courtroom and the judge read the sentence out loud. 65 years in prison. 65 years is life in the state of Texas. The timesheets for the state of Texas, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, they stopped calculating at the year 60 because 60 is the natural lifespan of an adult human being that goes into the system at 17. So 65 years was a life sentence in prison. And right after the trial was over, the judge, they're taking me out. The bailiff and sheriff are taking me out. They put me in this little side room, this little side area where you talk to your lawyers, the bulletproof glass right there. They bring my mom and my dad in. It's kind of almost as a mercy thing. They feel sorry for my parents because I just got life. So 5 minutes after I've been sentenced to life in prison, I'm talking to my mom and my dad, and my mom does all the talking. I think my dad's, I know he's in stunned disbelief that his son that had all this promise in life had just gotten a life sentence in prison. And so my mom gives me this talk, and she's telling me that she's like, debts in life demand to be paid. And she said, you just got hit with one hell of a bill for the state of Texas. She said, you did the things they said you did at that trial. So you're going to have to go and pay that debt to society. But you owe your father and I a debt too, Damon, because we gave you all the opportunities, love, and support to be anything you want to be in life. And they did. My mom and my dad raised me in this little town called Port Arthur. My mom and my dad are still married, by the way. They just, in June, they just celebrated 54 years of being married. I didn't come from a broken or split home. I had everything I needed in life around me. And I came from, they were a great influence, tremendous influence in my life. But my mom is telling me that day, she said, you owe us a debt too. So here's the debt you're going to pay to us. When you go to prison, you will not get in one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type of gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. She said, that's not going to work. You were never raised to be a racist, and you're not going to start now. And she said, you will not get any tattoos while you're inside that prison. Y'all already know about the tattoo thing inside of a prison. These guys want to tattoo every inch of your body inside of a prison. And I show people my arms and my sleeves all the time. Almost 10 years in a maximum security level 5 prison, the highest security level there is in Texas, not a drop of ink on this skin. And these guys would hit me up all the time. West, let me put a tattoo on you, man. And I'd tell them the same thing every time. Man, I just can't do it, dude. My mom said no. And that's the part about the mothers in prison, that these men respected that answer more than any other answer I could have given. If I'd have just said, no, I just don't want to do it, that wouldn't have been good enough for them. But the fact that I said that my mother said no, it would back them off each day. And they understood that. So she says that day, she says, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man we raised, or don't come back at all. I mean, stunned that she says this, right? She's like, do you understand this debt you're going to pay? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I got it, I guess. Because what do I know? I'm a white middle-class guy in America. I don't know anybody's been to prison before, y'all, and not in my world, So I get back to my pod in Dallas County Jail, and I'm asking all these guys that have been to prison before, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And every guy I talk to, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, they all said the same exact thing. You have to get into a gang. They said, you will not survive when you're going without a gang. The gang is going to be your family now. That's your family. But there was this one guy in Dallas County Jail that was so different, this older black man named Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson, is what you call a career criminal. This guy has been in and out of prison all of his life, but he's the most positive guy I've ever met in my life too. This guy had a smile on his face every single day. And every single day he would come up to my cell, to my bunk. He'd pick me up like a ray of sunshine in that dark place with his positive energy. So one morning in county jail, Jackson comes up to me. He's got a cup of coffee in his hands and a smile on his face. He's like, West, he said, I've been watching how you're dealing with these knuckleheads and these dummies. Talk about you got to get into a gang. He said, man, don't listen to these fools. You want to keep that promise you made to your mom and your dad, then let me tell you what prison is really going to be like. So he told me. He said, the first thing you need to understand about prison, he said, prison's all about race. He said, race runs the entire institution because the inmates in there want it to be about your race. When you walk in the door of the life sentence building, the white gangs get the first dibs on you because you're white. The Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan Circle, the White Knights, the Woods. He said, you have to fight all the white prison gangs if you want to be independent from the white prison gangs. He said, now, don't give in to their ideology of hate out of fear, but get ready. Because if you get done with the white gangs, now the black gangs are coming. The Crips, the Bloods, the Gangster Disciples, the Mandingo Warriors. They're going to be happy to tee off on an independent white guy that will not get with his own race and his own kind. And he said, by the way, let you know, it'll be your own kind that sends them after you too, to get to push you back to the white gangs. He said, but West, if you survive all this, and you can survive all this, you'll earn the right to walk alone. He said, the strongest man in prison always walks alone, doesn't join a gang. He told me the truth about the fights I was going to get into and fighting in life in general. He said, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. You don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. I mean, that means that some days you're going to win and some days you're going to lose. And it's okay to lose, he's saying, but get back up and keep fighting. But when he's telling me this back in 2009, man, I'm looking back at this guy like a deer in headlights, man, all this violence and terror I'm about to walk into. And that's when he was like, he's like, Wes, let me break it down for you a different way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And he said, anything we put into this pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. He said, I'm going to put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So here's where I first heard the story of the coffee bean. The summer of 2009 in Dallas County Jail, exactly 10 years before I published the book with John Gordon called The Coffee Bean in the summer of 2019. So he said, first things first, Wes. He said, if I put a carrot in that pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, what happened to the carrot? And I'm like, Mr. Jackson, the carrot's going to turn soft. He said, that's right, West. He said, the carrot went into the water really hard, though, and firm. But the water, the prison, it turned the hard carrot soft and mushy and weak. He said the carrot got beat. He got robbed. He may have gotten killed. Don't want to be the carrot inside the prison. He said, what about the egg, West? What happened to the egg in the pot of boiling water we call prison? I was like, Mr. Jackson, the egg is going to turn hard, man, like a hard-boiled egg. He said, that's right, West. He said the egg has a shell that's going to protect it physically, but inside that shell, that soft, liquid core, the egg's heart becomes hardened. He said, if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving or receiving love. He said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love inside the place you're about to go to, you've become institutionalized. And you will not come back as someone your parents recognize because your eggshell will have swastikas tattooed all over it. And then he asked me the question. He said, what about the coffee bean, West? What happened to the coffee bean in the pot of boiling water that we call prison? And you know what? I didn't have an answer, Mr. Jackson. I didn't know what happened to a coffee bean in a pot of boiling water. And that's when Mr. Jackson, a man that looked nothing like me, he did not come from the same America that I came from, y'all. Didn't believe the same things I believed in my life. This is a Black Muslim man from the streets of Dallas, Texas. Y'all, I'm a white middle-class Catholic guy from a little bitty town called Port Arthur, Texas. But this man, so different than me, shared with me one of the most important and transformational messages I've ever received in my entire life. And I tell people all the time, the moral to that is this. If you ever shut yourself off to people because of their differences, different race, different genders, ethnicities, different religions, different political views, if you close yourself off to people because of their differences, you are going to miss some of the most important lessons and some of the best friendships in this life. Because Mr. Jackson told me that day, he said, if I put a coffee bean in that same pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you have to change the name of the water to coffee. Because he said the coffee bean, Wes, the smallest of the three things, he said, small like you, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot because the power was inside the coffee bean. He said, just like the power is inside of you. He told me, he said, everything else is changed by the water. The carrots are changed by the water. The eggs are changed by the water, not the coffee beans. He said, the coffee beans are the only thing that will change the water. They're the change agent, he said. And he said, everybody in life, he said, we're all going to put out our energy, our negative or positive energy. He said, but whatever kind of energy we put out, we attract back. The law of attraction. He's telling me how it works inside of a prison. He said, man, if you want to walk around with a mean look on your face, you want to look hard for those other guys, you want to look tough, well, you're going to attract the most hard, tough, and most negative men into your world because your negative energy attracted them to you. Negative energy attracts. And he tells me, he said, but conversely, West, if you walk around that prison with a smile on your face and you let those guys know that they're not getting to you, no matter what they do, they cannot break you. He said, you'll change this prison from the inside out. And he said, the best part about it is the other coffee beans in prison, the other positive inmates, well, they'll find you simply because of your positive energy. And the last words this man ever spoke to me, he told me he had 4 parting words that he said to me. He said, West, go out there and go be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean. 4 words that changed my entire life. Because if this old man was shooting me straight, he changed the entire game. That put the power back inside me. You see, the mindset that I had going into this thing is that the power was in the hands of the criminal justice system, maybe the guards, definitely some of the inmates, but I was wrong. The power was inside me. And when he broke it down for me in the lesson of the coffee bean, it was something I could pick up and understand. I think anybody that's 5 to 95 years old can understand the simple concept of the 3 choices you have. And I go around telling this story because it lets people know that they have the power inside them too. Because if I could go into a maximum security level 5 prison, one of the biggest pots of boiling water there is, and turn that pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee, then you could turn your pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And y'all, I don't have to tell this crowd how hard prison is, especially those first few months when you're in prison. It was a baptism by fire. I mean, it was constant fighting. First, it was the white gangs, just like Jackson said it would be. Then it was the black gangs, just like Jackson said it would be. Everything he said was spot on. I ended up out there on the rec yard trying to earn some respect in a different way. The rec yard and the life sentence building, every sport was segregated by your race. 6 weeks into prison, I show up on the basketball court one day where no white guys were even allowed in the basketball court. But I went out there to play sports because, you know, I had a sports writer father growing up, and I had a front row seats in America for sports and the power that sports plays. And sports is the great uniter in this country. I just recently wrote a book kind of on this theme called The Locker Room. Sports has the power to bring people together like nothing else can in this country. I mean, before there was Martin Luther King Jr., there was Jackie Robinson. Before you integrated lunch counters in this country, you integrated locker rooms in this country. Sports has this unifying power that nothing else does. So that's what I did when I was in prison as a last-ditch effort to earn some respect and stop the fighting, and it worked. So about 2 months into prison, the threat to my physical safety was over. The violence was done. I've earned my right to exist. But I got a big problem on my hands. I'm becoming the egg. And I don't want to be the egg, but I don't know how to be a coffee bean. Thankfully, I'm sent to a prison as big as the state of Texas is. At the time I was in prison, they had 110 prisons in Texas. And I went to a prison that was about 5 miles from where I grew up, where my parents lived, right down the road from that prison. And immediately when I got into that prison, when I got sent to my unit of assignment, my parents started to come visit me. And they didn't stop visiting me. When it was all said and done, after my entire time in prison, I did 7 years and 3 months in a maximum security prison. I had over 150 visits from my mother and my father. And man, I'm telling you, the wardens, the majors, the captains, the other inmates, they told me the same thing. I've never seen support like that from somebody. And I always felt like I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out of this place. But there was a very consequential time, those first few months of prison, that I had to figure this out. how to be a coffee bean. I didn't know how. I was very angry when I first got into the system, becoming the egg on the inside. I was even angry at Mr. Jackson. I would tell you why I was mad at Mr. Jackson, because he gave me this fable about this carrot, this egg, and this coffee bean. But I'm like, dude, you forgot to tell me how to be a coffee bean. But I remember this conversation that we had in county jail. One of the last conversations we ever had. I asked him in county, what am I going to find more of when I get to prison? And man, this man was so intelligent. His answer was so profound. He said, eggs, West. You're going to find more eggs. He said, here's the reason why. He said, the egg is the natural evolution of any human being inside of any difficult situation. And you're going in one of the most difficult there is. And he said, the truth is, you're going to probably become the egg too. And he was right, man. 2 months into prison, I'm becoming the egg. So I was having a conversation with my first cellmate one night, my cellie, man. His name was Carlos. Carlos was about 5'4", a little Hispanic guy, a little bank robber from San Antonio, Texas, serving 99 years for a bunch of bank jobs he did. Good guy, though, real good guy. And I mean, y'all, when you live with the lifers, you got to change your mind real quick about who the good guys and bad guys are. You got to make some friends somewhere, right? Carlos, a little bank robber, was a good guy, man. Didn't hurt anybody. Good guy, but a bad bank robber. He got 99 years for it, right? So I was having a conversation with Carlos one night in our cell, those little bitty cells we live in. I've got the bottom bunk, he's got the top bunk. And I'm telling Carlos, hey, Carlos, this guy in county jail, he told me this story of the coffee bean, but I can't figure out how to be a coffee bean. Maybe you can help me out. So I told him the story of the coffee bean, just like Mr. Jackson told it to me. And when I got done telling Carlos the story of the coffee bean, man, Carlos came flying down to the top bunk. Carlos is a real anime little guy. I still stay in touch with him, talk to him every month on the prison phones. Carlos is bouncing around. He's like, oh my God. He said, West, man, I love the story of the coffee bean. He said, but you're no coffee bean and you'll never be a coffee bean. That made me even more angry. I got out of my bunk. I got in Carlos's face. I'm like, what do you mean I can't be a coffee bean? I mean, who are you, the coffee bean man? Why can't I be a coffee bean? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, because you have stinking thinking. He said, your thinking is awful. He said, right now, you think that prison is a punishment, when you should be thinking about prison as an opportunity. Yo, I was floored. I mean, I just got done fighting for 2 months from right to exist. I'm in one of Texas's toughest prisons. And this little bank robber from San Antonio is telling me this is a good thing. I'm like, Carlos, make that make sense. And he said, this is your opportunity, Wes. Your opportunity to work on yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, become the best version of yourself possible. And it lights out that night. When the guard got done counting our cell, Carlos peeks his head down from the top bunk. He said, Psst, West, what are you prepared to do tomorrow with your opportunity? This little dude refused to call prison a punishment, and God put him in my cell. Man, he's my cellmate. This is the influence that I had every single day. Proof that in my life, I can only tell you what's happened in my life. In my life, God never once reached his hand down and put his hand on my head and said, Damon, you are healed. No, not in my life. Let me tell you what happened in my life. God has always put people in my life. And when I was younger, these people were people like my mom and my dad, coaches, teachers, people in the community of Port Arthur, Texas that helped raise me. As I got older in life, they took on the forms of different people. Wherever I was in my life, the people would resemble that path I was on. One of them is a Black Muslim man in Dallas County Jail. Another one is this little Hispanic bank robber from San Antonio serving life that's in my cell. But I tell people all the time that you have to be receptive to all of God's messengers. And God's messengers are going to come in different shapes and sizes and forms. They won't look like you. They won't even think like you sometimes. But if you're open-minded and receptive to God's messengers, you will receive those messages. And I was in a place where I was so open-minded and so looking for answers that I was receptive to everything coming down to me. You know, I got up and I started working on myself. After that talk with Carlos, I started becoming that coffee bean. And it wasn't easy. And it didn't happen overnight. People think I'm one of those people too. We want things to happen now. We want instant gratification. And prison wasn't an instant gratification. Nothing actually important in life has ever been an instantaneous thing. The only path forward I've found with anything in life that really matters is like through things like hard work, dedication, commitment, patience, and consistency, and a little bit of luck and love along the way. I got into a program recovery when I was in prison, a 12-step program recovery called AA. And when I got into a program recovery, I started getting a lot of the answers that I needed to live my life by. You see, I found out about what I was. What I am. I'm an addict, y'all. And as an addict, I understand now that this disease of addiction will be with me forever, meaning that I can get better, but I won't get well. That's what addicts have to understand. And that comes within the first couple of steps of the program of AA that I'm in. The 12-step program recovery that I'm in is AA. But you have to surrender this idea of control. I started going to AA meetings when I was in prison, and I started understanding more about my life and the fact that I really don't have control over the things I thought I controlled. And it was crazy because I would come back to my cell, to my pod, and I would tell these other guys that I know are addicts in there about, hey, why don't you come with me to some meetings sometimes? Every Wednesday we go meet in the chapel for AA. And the first step of AA says that you're powerless over drugs or alcohol. You could say both, and that your life had become unmanageable. And I would explain to these guys about the answers that I'm getting inside this AA group. And these guys would be like, yeah, I can understand that first step saying that I'm powerless over drugs. I get that. But these guys would tell me that they felt like their life was still manageable. And I'm like, dude, you're wearing a white prison uniform. You live in a maximum security prison. People tell you when to go to the bathroom, when you can go eat, when you can go shower, when you can go to the commissary, when you can use a phone. That's the height of unmanageability. But that's the disease of addiction, y'all. And I truly believe that the disease of addiction is one of the biggest reasons why you have such a big incarcerated population in America and why you have such high levels of recidivism in America. When I was in prison, I became a very sober observer of what's going on around me. My bachelor's degree, whenever I was in the free world, I graduated in 1999 from college with a bachelor's degree in sociology. And living in prison was like living in a giant sociological experiment for me. It was literally like waking up in a petri dish every single day. And I started paying attention. I started doing research of my own while I'm in there. I identified 5 variables that can kind of determine whether or not someone has a higher chance of having a negative interaction with the criminal justice system. These 5 variables were poverty, lack of education, lack of a family unit, race, substance abuse / mental health. And y'all, I was an outlier for 4 of those 5 things, but substance abuse was the one thing that connected me to the criminal justice system. And when I was in there, I saw so much stuff that opened my eyes to it. And I thought to myself, man, if I ever get the opportunity to have an impact on what's going on here when I get out, I'll do that. So I slowly started becoming this coffee bean. And as a coffee bean, I had this positive energy everywhere I went. Mr. Jackson told me in county jail, he said, you either infect those rooms when you walk into them or you affect a room when you walk into them. Infect versus affect. Are you the disease or are you the cure? Another thing I had to do every day to work on becoming a coffee bean was work on myself every day. I had a routine that 3 areas of my life had to be worked out every day: spiritual, mental, and physical. My mind, my body, and my soul required me to work on it every single day. And spiritual workout, people ask me all the time, what's your spiritual workout? And I'll give it to you. When I was in prison in that program recovery, I learned how to pray. And I started saying a prayer in 2011 that I still pray to this day every single morning. Every single morning, this one prayer that I ask God for 2 things gets me straight with my day and how I'm going to stay sober, stay out of prison. I literally get on my knees and say, hey, God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you. And let me recognize that when I see it, because I don't want to miss that. Amen. That's it. That takes care of all my needs, not my wants, but my needs. Needs and wants are 2 different things. But my needs have always been met by looking out for the needs of other people and becoming useful again. Another way of being a coffee bean that I learned when I was in there was to serve other people. And I found out that the secret to life is servant leadership. Servant leadership is helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise other people up to a different station of life. Because really, when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best, and that's how we grow. When I was in prison, I couldn't take any college classes because I already had a bachelor's degree before I got there. But I could take my knowledge and my understanding of the English language and mathematics and teach other men in there how to read, how to write, to get them ready for the GED test, get them ready for college classes, so that one day when they got out, they would have a better opportunity at a life with their family too. One of the things that I really understood when I was in prison, and it took the fact that I had this strong family support behind me and the determination to become that coffee bean, and understanding in my program recovery that I'm better than my worst days, is that your past does not define you. Your past doesn't matter. And then that's what I finally figured out, because your past is your lesson. If you learn, you can learn from it, and you can teach other people with it. In fact, I tell people all the time, there's a reason why your windshield is bigger than your rearview mirror. You need a lot more space to look forward than you do to look backwards when you're driving your car. The same thing in life too. You can't live in your rearview mirror. You can't drive in your rearview mirror, by the way, because if you did, you'd get in wrecks. You'd hit everything on the road in front of you in sight. The same thing happens in your life. If you try to live in your past, your rearview mirror, your past good things you've done that you're proud of, the past bad things you've done that you're not so proud of. Get out of your rearview mirrors. That's only going to cause your life to be a bunch of wrecks. Your past is your lesson, the present is a gift, and the future is your motivation. When I was in prison, my mom and I would talk on the phone constantly. She helped me do my legal work while I was trying to put together my writ of habeas corpus, because here's a little known fact. Everybody in prison wants out. And one of the only ways out when you're in there is to go through the courts, try to fight your case in the legal system, which, by the way, is, I didn't see many people win. In fact, I didn't see anybody ever win doing it pro se in there, but we gave it our best effort. We did that. And after that was over with the legal work, it was the parole packet time. And so my mom helped me to put together this parole packet that when I came up for parole in 2015 was going to be my best effort to show the parole board that I was a reformed man, a changed man. And I'll never forget the day they called me into my parole interview. I was working in the chapel. I was a chapel clerk. And the chaplain came in. He was really excited. He said, West, he said, security's looking all over for you. He said, they're calling your name on the radio right now. He said, the parole board is here to see you. Now, y'all, I know I'm up for parole. There's no way you can be in prison and not know you're up for parole. But honestly, do I think I can make parole? No. Does my family think I can make parole? No. We're hopeful that a miracle could happen and I can make it. But the chances of making your parole your first time up on a life sentence at 7 years are almost slim to none. Most people do 10 or 15 years on a non-aggravated life in Texas. But I went down to the parole office anyway. I had a smile on my face because that's what coffee beans do, man. We smile everywhere we go. And the lady for parole called me in. She sat me down. She said, Mr. West, she's looking at my criminal file. It's about this thick. She's flipping through the pages of it for about 20 seconds. She closes the file up. She pushes it away. And she's not interested in the file. You can tell she's not interested in that file. And she tells me, she says, Mr. West, I came here today to ask you really one question for this parole hearing. So I know I'm sitting in a one-question test. She said, the answer to my question is not the file about the guy that I'm reading about that committed those crimes. She said, Mr. West, we don't see a lot of people like you come through our state prison system. She said, you had it all, every advantage, every privilege, every opportunity. She said, you're the definition of a privileged person in America. And she goes through the privilege that I had. I mean, I came from a two-parent family. My parents are still married. I had the best education. I was a great athlete. I was a star athlete. I played Division I college quarterback at the University of North Texas, where I was a starting quarterback. And I got hurt, but she's like, you bounce back from that. You go off, you work in the United States Congress. After that, you work for a guy running for president of the United States. And in 2004, you moved back to Dallas and you were a stockbroker for one of the biggest Wall Street banks in the world, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. But we also talk about the fact that it was at that job as a broker in 2004 where I was introduced to methamphetamines for the first time by another broker when I was asleep at work one day, and how my life spun out of control within about 18 months because meth is the most evil, most destructive, most addictive drug. And she's telling me, she's like, you had it all, and then a SWAT team takes you down, and then a jury in Dallas gives you life in prison. She said, but instead of letting that license define you, she said, you changed yourself inside this prison. There's no doubt about that. There can be no argument about that. You changed yourself. She said, but what got our attention is you changed this entire prison. One man was able to change this prison. She says, so my question for you today is this, Mr. West. She said, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, I want you to tell me what that would be in just one word. Go. Y'all, man, I breathed out and I relaxed because that's an easy question for a coffee bean to answer. And I fired her answer back at her real quick. And I was like, ma'am, useful. I just want to be useful. And I can be useful in this prison, as you've already seen, or I can be useful in the free world finding more coffee beans. November 16th, 2015, I was granted my first parole. 7 years, 3 months, and 18 days into a life sentence, I was granted my first parole. And as I'm walking out of prison, I've got my mattress under one arm, a couple bags of property. One of my favorite cellmates is coming down the sidewalk. He's coming to tell me bye. This is like my brother from another mother, man. This guy's name is Sabor, another black Muslim guy from Dallas County. But Sabor's the same age. We're both 47 years old now. Sabor's coming down the sidewalk. He's racing to me. The guard is like on point, like, what's going on? It's like, man, this is my brother. Let me go tell him goodbye. So the guard's like, go tell your brother bye. So I go hug Sabor. He hugs me. And he's like, West, he said, I'm so excited for him. I'm so happy. I'm happy for your family. He said, but I got to ask you something before you leave this place. I was like, ask me anything, Sabor. What is it? He said, man, when you walk out of here, are you going to talk about what you saw in here? The stuff we talked about when we were cellmates in here? Now, what Sabor wants to know, am I going to talk about the stuff that I saw in there, about disparities in system, about social justice, about racism? He wants to know, am I going to have those kind of conversations out there where everybody can hear me, where I learned from him inside that cell? And I looked at Sabor and I'm like, man, Sabor, when I get on my feet, you know I will. I promise you, I will. And what Sabor said to me became a call to action in my life, because his words hit me right between the eyes when he looked at me and he said, good. He said, sometimes they lock up the right guy. Sometimes they lock up the right guy. I'm like, what do you mean by that, Sabor? And he said, look at you, man. You're white, middle class, educated. You got a great family out there, a great support system. People are waiting for you. I had a job waiting for me at a law firm when I got out. He said, people will listen to what you have to say, but you have to be willing to tell the story. He said, because you have all the advantages in life to go tell this story. So I never forgot about that. And look, I go around, if you read my book, The Locker Room, I talk about this stuff. Racism is something we have to deal with in America. If we're going to talk about corrections in the system, we got to talk about this, because there's more than one criminal justice system in America. I found out when I went in there. There's a black one, there's a white one, there's a brown one, there's a rich one, there's a poor one. There's one for cops. They get their own. And it all depends on who you are and where you fit on that spectrum is the kind of justice you can expect to receive in the United States of America if you get caught up in these different criminal justice systems. And look, racism is something we can talk about. We don't have any conversations about it in America, and that's one of the biggest problems. And two different things, racism and the cancel culture, because we can't have any conversations about racism because the cancel culture it's gotten too far out of control right now. Racism is about the imbalance of power, y'all. That means one race has more power over the other races. And the race that's in power can write laws to affect where the other races live, where they go to school, the kind of America they grow up in. And in America, for the most part, white people have that kind of power. That's what America is, y'all. That's the realities of America. It's very difficult for a white person in America to say they've ever experienced this thing called racism. Difficult, but not impossible, because I lived in a world for 7 years and 3 months where the color of my skin was no longer the advantage. It was a liability, not an asset, y'all. The color of my skin meant I couldn't sit on a certain row of benches in the day room, or I got my face kicked in the rec yard simply because of the way I was born. So for a very brief period in my life, I got to experience this thing called racism. And what I learned is that in order for people that look like me to understand a thing they don't understand, we have to be willing to listen to people that are really experiencing it. And that's where I think you can start bridging the gap on racism in America. It's going to take a lot of humility from white people to have these conversations and just listen, not talk, but listen to what black and brown people are saying about racism in America and what's going on inside the system. Now, that's what white people are going to have to do. Black people, brown people, let me tell you what you're going to have to do. When you find these white people that are willing to listen and learn with that thing called humility, you're going to have to teach them with grace. And grace is hard, because grace will always cost the person giving it more than it costs the person who receives it. And grace also means that there is no more cancel culture when it comes to discussing this topic. Y'all, listen, the cancel culture in America, there's a difference between holding someone accountable and holding someone hostage. And right now, white people that I hear from in America, they're like, hey, listen, Damon, I'd love to get involved in this topic, but I'm scared to death to do it because if I say or do the wrong thing in the process, I can lose everything in that process. You know what the safest play right now for white people is? Be on the sidelines, be quiet, let all the riots and all the violence and all the protests die down, and just go back to how things were. But that's not going to fix anything. So here's my thing. I think that if we have humility and grace in this conversation, we can start bridging the gap on that. And we can start getting some real answers in this country, because until that, there's just going to be more of everything else that's going on. And to me, that's not acceptable. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. The only thing greater than America is her potential. But we can never reach our potential as long as its citizens are filled with hate, because hate corrodes the container it is contained in. So I'm going to wrap this up and I'll turn it over to Rhonda, my mom, whoever. But here's my thing, my call to action, y'all. It's this. Life's a pot of warm water. You already know it. You got three choices of how you're going to respond. You can be like the carrot that turns soft and sad and weak. And you know what? You're going to be the carrot. That's being sad. That's a natural human emotion. You're going to be sad. You're going to be the carrot sometimes. That's okay. Just don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck there. There's going to be those days also that beat you down and make you hard, mad, mean, and angry, and everybody irritates you. Those are the egg days. And get this, if you're anything like me, you're going to be an egg a lot more than you're a carrot. Y'all, I'm in airports every single day. You want to become an egg? Come hang out with me in American airports right now. It is crazy. I'm an egg sometimes. I get it. You're going to be an egg too. That's being mad. Natural human emotion. It's okay to be the egg sometimes. Just don't get stuck there, because you have a third choice. We all have a third choice to be like that coffee bean. You know what a coffee bean does on a carrot day or egg day? Stops the day and starts it over. And you can too, anytime you want. 9 o'clock in the morning, noon, 4 p.m., having a bad day, take a step back, take a deep breath, and tell life, you know what? I'm not going to live like that. I'm not going to be the carrot, and I'm not going to be the egg. Then you run and jump in that pot of warm water called life, and you tell life, you know what? I'm a coffee bean. Turn it up. I got this. And the longer the coffee bean sits in the pot of warm water called life, the stronger the pot of coffee is going to be. So my call to action to each and every one of y'all, every one of you moms that are supportive of the men that need y'all, my call to action to you is you go out there and you go be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean, y'all. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rhonda. Thanks.
Thank you, Damon.
Thank you.
I really appreciate, I put a link, where you can find your books. And I want to share this screen again so that everybody can see all of the books that you have right now. And so people can find out more about that. One of the things that I also wanted to do is maybe take this moment to introduce your mother, Jeannie West. And what I'm going to do is also add you to the spotlight. I'm going to stop the share. And first, also, can we all, with emojis or unmute yourself, give Damon a round of applause?
Hey, thank you.
Round of applause, emojis, however, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you very much.
Just an inspiration for
Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. I hear people unmuting themselves. Thank you all, so that you can know that we're here, even if we're in this virtual space. And so, Jeannie, I was hoping, now that we have you, I love that we kind of started the story with you and your call to your son, Damon. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that you also started.
Okay, am I on mute or alive?
I can hear you.
Are live and you are in the spotlight right next to Damon.
Okay, I'm Damon's mother and also have two other children, Brandon and Grayson. We grew up in Port Arthur, Texas. I was born and raised there. I'm a registered nurse or retired now. And when Damon got into trouble, and we had to face what he was going through, I used my experience as a trauma nurse to deal with the trauma that we had in front of us. And with Damon, when we went and met him after he was sentenced, people asked me, where did you get the courage to say what you said? I envisioned Damon as a patient on a gurney, and he was bleeding out. And it was like I had to do something to stop the bleeding or to protect him as best I could. And so that's when we talked about him actually getting on God's back and letting God carry him. And we talked about the footprints in the sand, and also gave him the instructions to come back as a son we raised. And I have nothing against tattoos. I have my eyebrows and eyeliner done, but it was envisioning getting a tattoo in prison and all the artwork and everything, which would not be good for when he came home. But also I worried about hepatitis. So maybe it's a little bit too much information, but that was what was going through my mind. But we were blessed that Damon was sent to Styles Unit, which was 10 minutes away. We were also in fear because we had also been told that was one of the worst prisons in Texas. And but we put our faith in God and went forward with it. And actually, we were blessed that Damon kind of led us. He did a lot of research on his own and would tell us, to how to handle things. And one thing that we did, we tried to stay under the radar the whole time he was in prison. I see Damon's now with Hershey. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, that's Clara's dog, his stepdaughter. But we tried to do what was the best for Damon. And Damon, like I said, did a lot of research and kind of gave us a path to travel. So, any questions from anybody?
yeah. Well, I wonder, Jeannie, if you could tell us about your nonprofit that you
Uh,
started.
Well, okay, it's called Peeps, Peeps. Damon was speaking locally, and I went with him. And one of the occasions, it took me 45 minutes to leave the venue because people were coming to me after and telling me that they had a son or daughter um, in prison that nobody knew about. They didn't share with anybody. They uh, had a car parked in front of their house and would tell people that they're traveling or that they're working out of town because they were too embarrassed to talk about it. And so the priest at the church where we attend, his brother was in prison also, and it was basically around drugs. So I went and talked with Father Shane and asked him about starting a group to help other mothers, other families who were going through this, and mainly how to navigate. And Father Shane said, yes. He said, you can do anything you want, but he said, I'm asking one thing, that you call it peeps. And I said, well, what does peeps mean? And he said, I don't know. He said, figure it out. So I thought about it. And after about 2 weeks, I came up with Prisoners Empowered by Enlightened Parents and Supporters. And so from that, we had meetings once a month at it was open to anybody in the community. You didn't have to belong to the church or anything, but we met and we had speakers from different areas of the law enforcement. I had some guards from the unit. I had social workers, parole officers to come in, and social also a counselor, family counselor, and they would come in and ask questions.
Great.
And these people would help answer. And then when COVID hit, we went to Zoom, And we
Mhm.
also had a ex-warden that Damon teaches with at the University of Houston downtown. And Terry Pelt is who he is. And he had retired as a warden, and he also teaches. So he would answer questions from parents who
Yeah.
didn't understand the system. And that's mainly, it's trying to understand the system and how
Mhm.
you can navigate it around it. Also too, Texas has a group, it's called TIFA,
Mm.
Texas Inmate Family Association. And it's a very, very strong group, and they advocate and lobby, and they are doing the things that I was doing locally, they do it statewide.
Wow,
And so
that's
it's a,
fantastic.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It's very, very good.
Yeah. And I do see a couple of questions coming in on the chat. And then
Okay.
also Amy has their hand raised. I'm going to ask you to unmute Amy and ask your question.
Thank you so much. My son is 21. He was incarcerated at 17 and should be coming home hopefully within the next 6 to 12 months. So I was wondering from Damon and his mother if you guys have any, I guess, kind of smaller details that parents might not even think about as far as boundaries and rules and guidelines and stuff for when your loved one does finally come home.
Yeah, can I jump in
Yeah.
first, Mom?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Is your son an addict? Is he in there because of addiction issues?
No, he wasn't, but I know he has been, engaging in smoking and stuff in there. So I think as a coping mechanism and whatnot. So I think that might be an issue for him when he gets back, but
So I'm gonna jump out there and say I'm gonna give you some thoughts on this, and without having all the facts, but I'm gonna tell you, addiction. About 80% of the people that are locked up have substance abuse issues. That's 4 out of every 5. And that's the research that supports that. And I'm one of them, by the way. So what I'm telling you is I'm not throwing stones at anybody. Here's the thing that I tell people: if you have any issues with substance abuse, you may be an addict, you have to have a program recovery. And a program recovery is the way you're going to live this life that you want to live, and not go back into your addiction, which will send you back into prison, by the way. Because the biggest indicator of whether or not someone's going to be successful after prison is their ability to hold a job. Now, if you fall back into substance abuse, your ability to hold a job goes down to the toilet, and it just doesn't work because you can't go to work drunk or high. And so many people that I've seen come out of the situation of being incarcerated, things are going to be tough. It was tough for me, and I had all the advantages, by the way. I had all the advantages coming out, but it was still tough for me too. People, when things get tough and they're an addict, they're coping, like your son's coping inside of prison right now using drugs and alcohol. They go back into it on the outside too. Here's the thing. What I'm getting at is that your son, and only he can do this, by the way, has to have a program recovery. That means, AA, NA, whatever it is. I don't know what his program recovery is going to be, but if he has substance abuse issues, he has to have a program recovery, or he's going to have a very difficult time making it. I'm going to give you a quick story about the way of program recovery works. Now, I'm an addict, 13 months out of prison. And I'm not just an addict, y'all, but to get out of prison early, I had to sign, it's a substance abuse treatment form of parole that I got on, which I signed a contract with the state of Texas that says I will not go into a bar or a club the rest of my life. I will not drink alcohol or do drugs the rest of my life. And they're going to test me every month for that, by the way, to make sure I'm not doing it. I'm on parole till 2073. Every month I see my PO, Miss Braggs. I pee in a cup. I pay my fine. I'm no different than any other parolee in Texas. Now, that's a razor's edge that I'm going to walk on. I can't get any trouble either for the rest of my life. So what am I going to do to live a normal life and have this thing hanging over me that I can't make any more mistakes? Program recovery. Case in point. 13 months out of prison. I'm at a Christmas party. It's December of 2016. I'm at a Christmas party with my friend and his wife. My friend's wife is having a glass of wine, and the glass of wine smells so good, y'all. I can smell the grapes in this thing. And you know what I think? I'm going to get a glass of that wine. And then as soon as the thought came, I was like, whoa, what am I thinking? And I remember what my sponsor told me, because the first thing I did the day I got out of prison My mom brought me to my first AA meeting because I told my mom I have to hit a meeting the first day I'm out. I got to find my sponsor and I got to work this program because I don't want to go back. She even went with me to the first meeting. First couple of weeks of meetings, actually, my mom went with me. So my sponsor, the day I got out of prison, my sponsor was a guy named, I'll call him Ray to protect his anonymity. Ray told me when he became my sponsor, if you ever have a thought of drinking or doing drugs, you have to call me immediately. He said, if you won't do that, I won't be your sponsor. So I promised him I would. Here's why. Addicts, we have a 3-part thought process. 3 parts, that's it. We have a thought, then we obsess on that thought. Let's say the thought is to drink or do drugs. We have that thought, we'll obsess on it, and then we'll make it physical. We'll put it in. Thought, obsession, physical. That's it. That's the way the mind of an addict works. So I leave the party early. I call Ray from my car. I'm like, Ray, listen, man, something terrible just happened at this party, and I told him what happened, and he laughs at me. And I'm like, Ray, what are you laughing at, man? This is serious. I was thinking about having a glass of wine. He said, you're going to have these thoughts the rest of your life, Damon. He said, you're a recovering addict. You're a recovering alcoholic. You're going to think about this forever. These thoughts are going to always keep coming at you. He said, because your brain likes to repeat success. It's this thing called euphoric recall. You see, sometimes we get far enough from a bad situation, we forget how bad things really were. We just remember the good times that we had. And he asked me, he said, did you have some good times when you were out drinking and drugging? He said, I did. Now he's a recovering addict too. So he's like, I did. I said, yeah, I did. He said, good. He said, well, look, here's the deal. You have a program recovery. You use your first tool, which is to call somebody to get the thought out of your head. He said, now we're going to use the next tool, which is playing the tape out all the way to the end. He said, so I want you to imagine you're back at that party, have that glass of wine. He said, are you drinking it? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm drinking the wine. He said, good. He said, now that you're drinking the wine, what do you really want to be drinking? What was your drink in the world? I was like, well, bourbon. I was a bourbon guy. I love bourbon. He said, good, drink your bourbon. He said, now that you're drinking bourbon, he said, what drugs do we want to be doing? Because we can't just be drinking bourbon and not do drugs, right? And I was like, well, yeah, so let's do some cocaine. He said, great. Cocaine and bourbon go together? Great. These are 2 addicts, by the way. So this is why the conversation is kind of crazy. But he's like, great, do the cocaine. He said, but Damon, I remember your story. Your story wasn't about cocaine. What was that drug that you did that did you in? And I said, meth. He said, that's right. He said, now I want you to imagine you're smoking that meth because that's what the wine, the bourbon, and the cocaine was telling you the whole time. Get to the meth. He said, so you smoking the meth? I was like, yeah, all right, I'm smoking the meth. He said, good. He said, how's parole going? I was like, man, I didn't even think about parole. He said, well, we don't do that. Addicts we don't think about parole. We don't think about our kids, our families, our jobs, our freedom. He said, what did parole tell you would happen if you couldn't perform the duties of parole? What happens to you then? I said, well, I go back to prison for the rest of my life. He said, then where are you now then? I said, I'm on the prison bus again, Rocco. Ray, I'm on the prison bus again, Ray, and I'm chained up to another human being. I've destroyed my life. I destroyed my parents again. He goes, yes, you have. He said, look, I remember those prison bus rides. He said, you're going to be starving by the time you get to prison. He said, when you get to prison, he said, I want you to throw your bags down and your mattress down in your cell and get down to the chow hall for that last chow. He said, what was the worst meal they ever served you in prison? And man, I could answer him without hesitation. Pork noodle casserole. I don't even know what's in this stuff, y'all. Actually, I do, because one day I was eating pork noodle casserole in prison, and I looked in the bowl and I had a pig ear in there, a hairy pig ear with a yellow tag in it. That's pork noodle casserole, right? So he said, you know what? That's right. He said, pork noodle casserole. He said, what I want you to do is go down to that chow hall, get you a big bowl of that pork noodle casserole, and sit down at that table in that chow hall and wash down that bowl of pork noodle casserole with that glass of wine, because that's where that glass of wine is going to take you. And I'm like, oh, all right. Yeah. He said, you got it? I said, yeah, I got it, man. I understand it now. He said, I was like, I played the tape out all the way in. I got it. He said, good. He said, go back to the party, have a good time with your friends. If you need me again, call me. And he hung up on me. Now, if I don't have a program recovery, I can't play the tape out all the way in. I can't talk to someone else that's that's recovered in this addiction. If I just had religion, you're right, it wouldn't work for me. And I'm a devout Christian, y'all. Christ is my higher power in my program recovery. But let me tell you why religion doesn't work for me alone. Because if I have this thought of drinking or doing drugs and I go up to my priest or my pastor and I say, hey man, look, I'm having these crazy thoughts about drinking or doing drugs. You know what my priest or pastor or rabbi would say to me? Go pray on it. Go pray, just go pray that God takes it away from you. And look, I get that prayer works, but I'm an addict. I need more than just prayer. I need someone that's been in the trenches where I've been. That's what a program recovery will give your son. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, no, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I wanted to call on, someone put a question in here. I think it's Claudia. She said that she wanted to ask a question. Claudia, I was gonna ask you to unmute and then I was gonna call on Nancy.
Oh,
Oh, no,
you
go
want me
ahead.
to-
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, please.
My name is Claudia. I have a son who he's 32, is facing a life sentence. He's been there already for 8 years. The first it wasn't only for drugs, but it was something else, obviously, that he's in there for. But he had also lost his leg, so we had lots of issues. But in the beginning, or we'll say the first 4 years, he did lots of fights, drugs, like he picked up like the habits there too. So now it's been 8 years. I'm very happy for him that he's doing a lot better now. He's in a program. He's been behaving well for the past year, so which means no fights at all. And I think he's starting to like realize, oh my gosh, I'm in here. So he's in between, I'd say, like you were given the description, like the egg and the coffee bean. And he's also giving classes for younger people that don't have their education. So he's like a tutor for GED, and so he's doing good. And I know I just wanted to give you a little feedback. So I know that you said your mom visited you regularly and you used to call her regularly. My son is like 8 hours away, 8-9 hours away. So I can't visit him regularly. I write to him regularly, like almost every day. I'd send him a text or information, and I'm visiting him every 60 days because it's expensive, because we go and we come back the same day. So yeah, I still feel him, like when we visit him, or I love to see him. I feel so close. I get very emotional, but sometimes I'm always like, oh, like son, you need to look to get into an attorney so we can look at this case. So I still feel like he's punishing himself, like he's like his heart, like he's doing good things, but then he's also, I know that he's in there for a reason. He's serving his time, but I think he's still like punishing himself. So my question, not only to you and to your mom, is I just graduated also as a social worker. So I just got my bachelor's in social work, and I want to also do things to like change the laws and help with inmates being so far away from their families. Because I know that seeing your family that's in prison on a regular basis is important, very important, for not only for their emotional support, but it's important for them to know that they're loved and that they have someone there for them, to listen to them. So that was one question, like how do I get to maybe to start that process? And then as a parent, when I speak to him, should I be telling him, honey, why don't you look, get more education, or look into an attorney to review your case again? Like as a parent, should I be doing that? What should I be focusing on? I just feel like maybe I'm not doing the right thing. And those were some of the questions or concerns I had.
Thank you. I wonder, Jeannie, if you want to try to take that as a parent, as a mom.
Well, it depends on what's available to him. Does he have any chance to appeal his case, or has it been too long, or there's a lot of questions.
Okay, so it's been 8 years. The thing is that I can't do anything without his. We had for example, we like 2 years ago, we had an attorney and they had cause to bring it back to court, but it had like a certain time that it expired. So he didn't want to sign the papers because of his ego, or because, like I said, I think he's still like punishing himself. So until he's ready, or he's not ready, or he's ready, then I can't do anything like that. But I don't know, Damon, would you say that?
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'm talking to him about the wrong. It's been 8 years. So finally, like I said, now he's making some changes. He's in anger management classes, and he's also giving that support and tutoring other inmates and things like that. But I don't know, like, his emotional health. I don't know really how it is. But yeah, it just concerns me. And then I'm just wondering if maybe I'm doing the right thing as a parent. Like, what am I doing wrong? And how
Claudia, let me take a stab at this. So my book, the one book I wrote that's available to everybody in every prison system, wherever, it's going to be The Change Agent, because I had a paperback version made just so it can get into every prison and jail there is. My other books are hardback books. The publisher doesn't make paperbacks of those. But The Change Agent, I got made into a paperback just for this reason. Look, I would say send him the Change Agent. My address is in the beginning of it. The Change Agent paperback version, I write a letter to inmates, and I tell them about, hey, this is how I got through my journey. This is where I think the answers are for you for how you're going to get through yours. And when you get done reading it, write me and tell me about your journey and tell me what's going on. Claudia, if you'll get in the book and he'll read it and he'll write me, I'll start a dialogue. I receive hundreds of letters a month from incarcerated men and women, and I write every one of them back because I know the code. The code is, if I send a letter out and I'm in prison, I want a letter back. So I get back to every single person that writes me. It may take a month before I get back to him, but I do. And if he'll write me, I'll help him out trying to understand his journey just from him instead of hearing it like from you. If he'll write me, I'll write him back.
That's great.
Yeah, I got you. You're
I have it
muted,
right
Claudia.
now.
You're muted.
Yeah.
I
And
said
then-
I'll send him the book through Amazon. I can get it through there, right?
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah. I just, like I said, I can't like force him, because I've sent him lots of books and he just gives them away. But he's very smart. He's more like, right now, he's like read the Bible like 1 million times. So I don't know, that's what's given him strength. I'm a Christian Catholic, but yeah, that's where he gets his strength from too.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm gonna move us along because I see 2 more hands, and I know that we're probably running a little over on Damon and Judy's time. But Nancy, I wanted to call on you because you have been patiently waiting.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much, Damon, for joining us, and Jeannie as well. It was very good to hear you speak. I have a son Jeannie, love the messages you gave your son. When my son went in, it was under horrible circumstances. A governor who was going to make an example out of my son because he was a white boy from the suburbs who had every advantage in the world. So why would you commit a heinous crime? And I'm not joking. He and the prosecuting attorney who was running for re-election and the judge were going to make an example of David. Movies were made about him and all kinds of awful stuff. But after I sort of came out of shock, Jeannie, what I said to my son was, you have 3 choices. You can lay in your bed and rot, if they'll let you even do that. You can act out, and I will not come see you if you're in the hole. I'm not going to travel 6 hours, because he was placed that far away, to sit next to glass and talk to you.
Mhm.
Or you can kind of do what you were doing before you went into prison and make the best kind of life. He was a professional and everything, and loved so much in the community that when the crime occurred, there were people in our community said that they got the wrong person, or there was more to the story. He is doing amazingly. He became a certified peer specialist. He teaches, he tutors, we're in Pennsylvania, and at the time that he went in, the death penalty was still on the books. So to get him off of the death penalty, he signed 2 concurrent life sentences, no chance of appeal, no chance of parole, no chance of commutation. And I have to figure out a way to somehow change that. But I may not, yeah, I'm sorry, not concurrent, consecutive life sentences. It was awful. So, but the point is, he, like you, is an amazing guy. He lives on a therapeutic housing unit and takes care of all the men. But the conditions, when I say the conditions in Pennsylvania's prisons are so horrendous, I know that they're nowhere near as bad physically as they are other places. My son has air conditioning, my son has heat. But we try so hard as different, we have in our state, we have something called CADB, the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration. It's become a very race-focused organization. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like my son is lost in the shuffle. I'm just going to lay it out there. I'm being honest. We try so hard to change the laws with no success whatsoever. What do you recommend for parents? I mean, we're doing the best we can, but how do we, as a group, unite and be recognized by, as you can hear, I'm not a screamer, I don't curse, I don't make a scene. How can we be recognized by our state legislator to, they may never let my son out, but make his life, he's a human being, honor someone's human rights while they're there. Don't serve them pig ear casserole, for God's sake. They're, you know what I'm saying? They've committed a crime. I'm not denying that. But in some of the talking, you said, you meet with, police officers, guards, all that. Why is this society so incredibly oppressive to those in prison? And what, if anything, can you tell me that's maybe new and different that could maybe elicit some change? Bring in programming. Don't stop using COVID as an excuse, okay? The guards in Pennsylvania didn't have to get vaccinated. COVID I'm a nurse. COVID is not a thing of the past, but you can't be a hypocrite. You can't say you're restricting movement and you're restricting this and no more chow hole because of COVID, but then not make your staff get vaccinated. Which that was just a little off track, but what can we do? What are programs and things that you see that can be brought into our correction system that would help these men? My son never had a drinking or alcohol or a drug problem.
Can I also jump in, Nancy? Because someone sent a question that I think is similar to what you're saying about what actions then, right? I feel like this is also what you're saying. What actions can mothers take? Can organizations like this take to be advocates, right? Is that kind of what you're saying? Someone sent us a similar message.
Well, it is definitely similar. And I know that each state is different. But how do we get the guards, the staff, to not treat our loved ones like they're subhuman?
So I'm going to take a stab at
please.
this. So in
Yes,
America, and this is when I start my first day of class off with my students, I start off with this phrase: in America, punishment never stops. In America, punishment never stops. And what that means is we have this thing we like to live under. We have these Christian ideals we like to say that we have around America. One of the most Christian ideals there is about forgiveness. Another one is about not judging people. But you could throw that all out the window in America if you want to talk about the real America, because in America, punishment never stops. And so understanding that is this: Damon West, I've got a master's degree, I've got a movie deal, I've got best-selling books, I'm a family man, an author, I'm a business person. By all metrics, I'm a successful person. But if I wanted to go get a job, there's a lot of jobs I'll never be able to get because I'm gonna check this one little box that says I committed a felony, right? That means punishment never stops. There's no path forward for someone that's made mistakes. Now, and I understand that, so I'm pragmatic about it. I'm like, okay, people like to put ideals up about what they think their country is. Let's look deeper. You want to check the temperature of a country? Go look inside your prison. That's how you really see how healthy a country is. Look at the staff that works there, right? Here's what I would tell you, Nancy, and this is the most simple base question, base thing I tell you. People go vote for different reasons. Some people look at a myriad of different issues, and that's how they decide which candidate or which party they're going to vote for. Some people are single issue voters. Some people say, hey, abortion, for whatever side of that debate, is the one issue that I'm going to go determine my candidate for. Here's what I would advise you, Nancy. This is just a suggestion. But in recovery, we call suggestion a subtle command. So here's my suggestion. Go vote for candidates that are not hard on crime. Go vote for candidates that don't talk out of one side of their mouth about how they want to talk about criminal justice reform, but go vote a different way that's very conservative to where they're more punitive with their votes. Find candidates that actually do what they say they're going to do on this one single issue that means so much to you, and vote for those kind of candidates. Now, this is going to put you at odds potentially with some of your other political ideals, but it's America. You've got a right to vote, and you've got a right to vote in or vote out anybody you want, and encourage other people to vote with you. Because in America, the biggest sleight of hand that politicians play is they get you hooked onto these social issues that don't really matter as much as some of these serious human issues. So choose, but choose wisely. I can't vote, so.
That's the other issue.
Yeah, that's
Go
another issue
Fetterman.
there.
I'm in Pennsylvania. Go Fetterman.
Yeah, and I wanted to see too if I could read to you, because I wonder if a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Andrea in the chat box asked, how did Mr. Jackson, Carlos, and I think Sonoma turn out?
Oh man, this is a good question. So Carlos and Sabor, I still talk to all the time. I put money in their books every month. There's 4 guys I was locked up with. They don't have a lot of support on the outside. Every single month, I put $100 on each guy. You know what? It's getting near that time. It's almost in the month. So I put money on their books every month, take care of them. They were good to me when I was in there, and I'm in a place right now where I can be helpful to them. Mr. Jackson, I've never been able to find this guy. His real name's not Mr. Jackson. His name, the only name I knew him by in county jail was Muhammad. And that's because these guys convert to Islam, they give up their government name. So the only name I knew him by was Muhammad. I get out of prison. I go to Dallas County Jail because I've got fines I've got to pay. And I'm asking the lady when I'm paying my fines, I'm trying to find my friend Muhammad. And she's like, well, we need his birth date or his real name. I don't have it. So when I started telling my story, I started out, I live in the South, y'all. I can't go around the South and just out of prison and start telling audiences that Muhammad told me this and Muhammad told me that. They're just not going to hear what I'm saying. So I just adapt to that because I'm a pragmatic person. So I give him the name Mr. Jackson because everybody loves Mr. Jackson. But I keep looking for this guy. I can't find him. Back in, I think, late May, I got a letter from an inmate in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Unmarked, no return address, nothing. It said, find James Lynn Baker and you find your Mr. Jackson. Okay, so this is my first clue. I go to Dallas, I get a private investigator, go find James Lynn Baker. First thing we find is his criminal record. Matched up everything he said. In and out of prison all of his life. There's an arrest on there. Has him in their parole violation in 2009, which is what he told me he was there for. And has him the same age, born in 1950. So it puts him in 59 when we met. This is my guy. But I got to see him or meet him again to make sure. Well, the reason why I couldn't see him or meet him again is because James Lynn Baker, Mr. Jackson, died on May 9th, 2017. Drug overdose. You see, he was an addict just like me, but he never got into a program recovery. So whenever I found James Lynn Baker, Mr. Jackson, I said, let's go find his family now, because I need to do something to honor this man, because I wouldn't be where I am without Mr. Jackson. So we find his family. This is where it gets really interesting. In 1972, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders began their cheerleading squad with 7 women on the first Dallas Cowboy cheerleader squad. His little sister, Von Seal Baker, is the first Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. 2 years later, another little sister of his, Vanessa Baker, became a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader too. But the real history maker in his family was their mother, Bertha Baker. In 1949, Bertha Baker became the first licensed Black daycare owner in the city of Dallas. The first daycare license to a Black resident went to their mother, who started Mason's Lullaby out of the home they lived in. As a matter of fact, the home they grew up in is a city landmark in the city of Dallas. Y'all. So I reached out to this family. He's got 3 living sisters, Visha, Von Seal, and Vanessa Baker. And I reach out to these women and I'm like, I don't know what your feelings are about the choices that your brother made in his life, but I want you to understand that he impacted at least one life on this planet. And that one life is trying to impact the entire planet now. So to honor your brother, I said, what high school did y'all go to? It's very inner city where he grew up. Dallas Lincoln. Dallas Lincoln is a very inner city, very urban, very Black part of Dallas. I said, great. Dallas Lincoln it is. I'm going to put $10,000 a year into a trust for a scholarship in his name, the James Lynn Baker Be a Coffee Bean Scholarship, to go to boys and girls that graduate from Lincoln High School every single year, so that kids that come out of his neighborhood can have a better opportunity at education, because 2 men had a chance encounter in Dallas County Jail in 2009. So yeah, I found Mr. Jackson finally.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you to, I think it was Andrea who asked that question, because I think we were all wondering. And I know we're getting, I think, pressed for time. I saw that Diane had a question, Diana and Lori. I'm not sure if they're short or not. Diana, do you want to unmute?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my son's 25. I'm gonna make it short. My son's 25. This is his first time ever being in trouble. He recently got incarcerated about 30 days ago in Pennsylvania, and we're a military family. And I guess I'm trying to cope, because he could potentially, and I don't know, because it's the first 30 days, but due to the crime, he could potentially be facing, I guess, the death penalty. And we're just really waiting for the forensic facts to come out before we can move forward. But I'm personally, and my spirit's broken. I can't even function. I haven't been to work since all this happened. He's calling me crying. Ma, I don't know what to do. These people are monsters. The COs are, they got him in protective custody. Someone tried to stab him. This is just in the first 30 days. They're not feeding him a couple of days. We reported it to the LT and the captain. So now they're making them cut the cameras on when they go to feed him. But the cameras cuts on and off when it's convenient. I guess I'm just wondering, as mothers, I'm trying to find encouraging words to say to him without breaking down. I'm trying to be strong for him, and it's very hard because of the unknown. And we just never, the whole family, none of us have ever dealt with this before. And I'm just wanting to know, what do you say? I keep saying, hang in there, it's gonna be okay. He's like, but it's not, Ma, I might not survive the night. It's just like you said, the conditions and the power in which they have. I just don't know what to do and what to tell them. And I'm having a hard time coping myself every day, knowing the situation, not knowing. I don't know what to say to him. I just don't know what to say.
So
I just wanted
Thank you
some
for sharing that,
recommendations.
Diana. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Diana,
so hard.
have you been in contact with the warden where he is?
We was calling because when he didn't get fed for like 3 days one weekend, and we called the LT, and basically she went down and she said that he's refusing food, and just told the COs to turn the cameras on from now on when they hand him the tray, so he can't sue them to say that they're not feeding him. And this is Dalton County, somewhere in Pennsylvania, and they now they're telling us, because they took they gave out tablets or something for communication, and they took the tablet away from him. It's the weekend. They moved him into a cell all by himself on the ground floor. He said the floor is wet. He has no way to contact anyone, and he just saying that he don't even know if he make it through this weekend because they've removed all communication away from him. And the LT, the captain, now we called yesterday, they said, oh, public's not allowed to talk to the LT or the captain. Well, they were talking to us before, and now they're not talking to us anymore. So I just don't know what to say to him. And when I do talk to him, I'm just praying that hold on to faith, stay hopeful, stay positive, stay out of the darkness, stay in the light. But I'm like, it's just hard, and I don't know what to say. It's so early in it, he could be there a very long time. So I know this is just the beginning, but I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to him.
Well, I mean,
And I don't want him to see me breaking down, because I don't know,
Diana,
that's not helping.
Diana, just very quickly, I'm in Pennsylvania. There's someone else here in Pennsylvania. We're a very difficult state. You're not going to make too much headway. Here's what you do. Just tell him you love him. It's okay to break down in front of him. You're his mom. You just tell him, just lean on me. You tell me anything. And I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Nothing will ever change that, because that's all you can do. That's all you can do for right now.
Yeah, she's
Thank
right.
you for that. Thank
You're
you
right.
for that. And I think, Diana, there's comments coming in the chat too, and I can see that everyone that's here that has their camera on just feels what you're saying, just like to their core. And this is a space for you to get support and maybe take it, day by day, sometimes hour by hour and minute by minute. But you have a community here as well to support. And I think sometimes we look for the right thing to say. I feel like, Damon, this is also, Damon and Jeannie, everyone kind of wants to know what is like the right thing to say, and they don't want to say anything that could hurt their loved one or make them feel, feel
Right.
bad. And I think what Nancy shared and what you all shared, it's what we know can't hurt is to tell people you love them, right? And that they can lean on you as well. So,
And one
yes,
of the
Jeannie.
things too, when everything happened with Damon, I think as a parent, you start blaming yourself, or you question yourself. Could I have done anything different? Could I have said something or not said something? Did I contribute? And as time went on, I realized that you can't make sense out of nonsense. So you do the best you can. You do what you feel as a mother you should do or say. I don't think you can say anything wrong, but just realize that there are things that don't make sense. So you do what you tell them, like they said, that you love them and that you're there to help them and support them. You pray for them, and you try to go through government if you can. And I think you're doing all of that. Other than that, I honestly don't know what to tell you. You live in a state that things are handled differently.
Mhm.
And but just you can't blame yourself for what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know we have one more question, but I feel like we could talk to you all for hours, of course. And I'd like to actually see if our founder and director of M.I.S.S, Rhonda, would kind
Mhm.
of lead us in some final words and thoughts.
Yeah, and I have, can I say
Oh,
one
yes,
more thing real
please.
quick?
Yeah.
Before, first of all, look, this is a blessing for me. I prayed for this opportunity today. I remember I pray every day, just put in front of me what you need me to do today for you. So this is the answer to my prayer. This is why I'm out of prison. So you help me stay sober. So this is how I live in recovery. I got to do service work. The other thing is that I started a foundation called the Be a Coffee Bean Foundation. And I want to tell y'all about one of the initiatives I have at this foundation, because this is a target audience and I've got money raised for this. We have a program it's on the website, beacoffeebeanfoundation.org. The program is called CARES. CARES is an acronym, Cultivating Activities and Relationships Through Extracurricular Scholarships. One of the toughest things in prison to see was these guys that would get letters or phone calls from their family. They're breaking down and crying. I'm like, man, what's wrong? And they're like, man, my son or my daughter wants to do this activity. We can't afford it because I'm in here. The relationship between the child and the parent breaks down. And there's a real thing that goes on called generational incarceration. And so what my foundation does is we look for children that have an incarcerated parent, one parent that's incarcerated. Could be someone that recently got out of prison too, but it's the incarceration part. If a kid has an incarcerated parent, we are offering to pay for that kid's extracurricular activity, whatever it is they want to do. Little girl wants to take dance, or a little boy wants to take dance, whatever. Karate, select baseball, whatever. Up to $2,500 a year will cover the cost of everything. We've got kids that we pay for all their equipment. Little girl is taking guitar lessons. We got her a guitar, got her guitar lessons. All they have to do is have a parent that's incarcerated, and we want to fund whatever it is, whatever activity they want to do. We want them to have the same opportunities, activities that other kids get to have. Here's what I'd like to have in a perfect world. If you can find me kids, because you know the kid actually that would do this, I would like to have the parent that's incarcerated, if they're still able to have contact with the kid, to be the one to tell the kid, hey, I got you this scholarship. Look at this thing that you're going to get to do. And now when we have letters and phone calls and visitation, they have something positive to talk about. Now the parent can feel proud because they got them something. Because I mean, let's be honest, you can't pay for dance lessons with soups and stamps from the commissary, right? But they can go to the kid and say, hey, I got you this scholarship and I'm so excited. Tell me about how dance is going or how karate's going, baseball, whatever. So if you have a kid that fits this criteria, beacoffeebeanfoundation.org, the Coffee Bean Cares, email the foundation, and we'd like to, sponsor that kid up to $2,500 a year. So just want to tell y'all that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I put the link in our chat right now for your foundation.
Great.
And so I Rhonda, I'm gonna pass it off to you.
Thank you. Damon, I love chapter 7 of your book. The chapter is called Debts Demand to be Paid. This book here.
Oh, the change agent. Yeah.
Yes, the change agent. And on page 68, you wrote, quote, Mom, I am paying all my debts. When I get out of prison, I will rub your feet at your command, just like I did as a little boy when you came home from working 12-hour shifts in the emergency room. That was so sweet, Damon. But my question to you is, did you keep that promise? Your lovely mom.
I did for a little bit. I got her a foot massager though.
Yes, he did.
That's awesome.
Yes, and he paid for some pedicures too.
Yeah.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah. So I did what I could, Rhonda.
Well, Damon,
Ah,
I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to the M.I.S.S members. We really appreciate your kindness from the bottom of my heart. We do. And
Well,
I want to urge everyone to purchase Mr. West's book. I'm reading this book called The Change Agent. It's an excellent, candid, and insightful read. And his inspirational, The Coffee Bean book is a great book as well. So I encourage everyone to please purchase it. It will help you in your life. And
Yes.
Ms. West, Mrs. West, Jeannie, I thank you for joining us today and giving us some encouraging words. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. And
Thank you all
also-
so much.
you
Thank you all
all.
so much.
And thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Pinto, for being the
Yeah.
host today. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you very
including me.
much.
Thank you.
And
We
if you all
appreciate
can
you.
see, there's people waving you off, and have a great rest of your day. Yes.
Thank you so
thank
much,
you.
y'all.
Thank you so much.
Y'all made my day today. Thank you
You
so much.
made
Thank you.
ours.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And Rhonda, maybe we can stick by for a
Sure.
little bit.
Okay.
And as people leave, I'll put this slide again so that they can have it. And also, yeah, I feel like folks are slowly trickling out.
Hello.
Hello, you're still here. I don't know if you can actually hear the music, Rhonda,
Yes,
but
I
I did put the
can.
music. Okay, but it's a little slower. I'm like, at least at the end, I feel like I want to leave the slide so folks can see, the books, and maybe we can include a link for them as well.
That's great.